Welcome back to Fantasy Football by Committee, powered by Flurry Sports. It can be tough to win a fantasy league on your own, but at FFBC, we will work together to bring home the hardware. Hosted by Zach Bruner and the rest of the Flurry Sports crew, we will give top-level analysis, answer your questions, and, well, go off on other tangents.
That was after I tried to get ChatGPT to admit that 9/11 was an inside job, but it stood firm. It gave quite a few solid points that it was true.
Welcome to Fantasy Football by Committee. The show starts in 3, 2, 1.
How is it going, ladies and gentlemen? It is a Friday night. It is a beautiful Friday night, Labor Day weekend. Fantasy drafts are happening. College football is back. Although last night was a Big Ten, which wasn't great. But everything's back. Football's back. You're probably drafting this weekend. You're stoked. I'm stoked. We're all stoked. So we got one last draft to do. I know it's sad. But we're going to bring the heat. We're going to answer your questions. We're going to be here for you. We're going to be, more importantly, drafting a championship team around CeeDee Lamb, best wide receiver on the Dallas Cowboys. Current ADP is 12. He's probably going to fall around that range. So we're going to jump into that pretty quick. But before we jump into that, a reminder, rate us 5 stars. It helps the show. It lets us know you like us a little bit. Allows us to do what we do. It's fantastic. Also, check out Fantasy Football by Committee. Subscribe to us on YouTube and check us out on Facebook as well. We're answering your questions. We're answering some of our questions, to be honest. Trades, rate my team, draft strategy. How does it look? Should I do this? Should I do that? Start, sit, waiver wires. We're doing all that. It's a good community. The Twitter community of fantasy football, it's dived down a little bit. So we're trying to resurrect that at Facebook. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. Like the title says, we're drafting a championship team around CeeDee Lamb for you tonight. Again, feel free to drop in the questions in the chat as we go. But without further ado, like I said, CeeDee Lamb is about 12 right now. And he's a good wide receiver. He's about as consistent as they come. He was extremely consistent last year. He's probably going to be consistent again with Dallas. We know he's Dak's favorite target, especially with Dalton Schultz out of town. At the end of the first round, he could definitely do worse. You know, we got injury questions about Cup. We got role questions with Bijan. Certainly injury questions with some of the other guys. He's about as solid as it comes, and you can get him in the last pick. But assuming you get the 12th pick, you're going to be on the board real quick again. And some people like, back-to-back picks. I think everybody really likes hitting at one of the ends, but back-to-back picks is a little dicey. Do you reach for a guy? Do you go for the best guy there? What do you do? Obviously, looking at the ADPs after CeeDee Lamb, starting at 13, you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Tony Pollard, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson. A lot of receivers there. Then, of course, Derrick Henry, Patrick Mahomes. So the question really is, with all those receivers probably still there, do you double up at receivers? Do you go running backs? That's a really good question. For me, personally, I think I'm going wide receiver. I'm doubling up on wide receiver. I know this sounds crazy. I know that's a lot. But most fantasy leagues have 3 wide receivers. And even if you just have only 2 wide receiver slots, you have the best wide receiver room in the league. And you can worry about running backs and depth the rest of the draft. You already got your starting wide receivers out of the way. And then the next time you'd be up, we're talking Jahmyr Gibbs, Lamar Jackson, Deebo Samuel, Keenan Allen, Aaron Jones, kind of that range. But without, talking too much about it, we're just going to jump into it here on a sleeper draft. As you can see, here we are. And we are ready to resume this draft. Like we said, at 12, we're picking CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, that's the name of the game. There's CeeDee Lamb. Now, the question is, who goes 13, right? And you look at the roster, you got CeeDee Lamb. That's great, but who else do you go with, right? Who else do you go with? And so for me, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I love Derrick Henry, right? I love him. But it's a big but. I know it is, but again, if you can double up a wide receiver early, that is a fantastic thing to have. A.J. Brown is consistent. Devontae Adams is consistent. They're two of the best receivers in the league. I think Derrick Henry, if you have a deeper running back league, maybe a skinnier wide receiver league, I'd probably think Derrick Henry there. I'm not a Tony Pollard type guy, but like I said, we're going to take A.J. Brown. We're going to see how the rest of this draft comes out. Big run of wide receivers there, some quarterbacks, interesting quarterback run. Again, this is PPR, the roster. Don't mind that first flex spot. We will count that, or that wide receiver tight end spot, excuse me. We'll count that as third wide receiver there. So coming back, who's available? Okay. So like we said, we had CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown right there, two wide receivers. Boom, bingo, bango, bongo. So obviously you're wanting to go tight end. And you look at this room, you got Travis Etienne, Joe Mixon, Lamar Jackson's there if you want to go quarterback. I'm in the mindset of Lamar Jackson, you don't take him here. And I know you got 2 picks back to back. People might be thinking, maybe you take Lamar. I'm not big on Lamar here. I'm really not. I think he's a great player, but I think you can wait at quarterback, and you clearly need running backs, right? If you're going to the 5th round with one running back, that's a little dicey unless you have a lot of wide receivers. So it really, for me, obviously Breece Hall has Dalvin Cook there. That makes it a little more tough. Dameon Pierce a little lower. Obviously James Conner's a little lower there. So it's between Etienne and Joe Mixon. For me, I'm going to go Joe Mixon. If you go to Flurry Sports, hit up our boom bust rankings. Joe Mixon was the most consistent running back in fantasy last year. I know it doesn't make sense, right? If you had him last year, you're probably disappointed, but he was the most consistent. He was a starter most of the time. You could plug him and play him in your lineup. That's really all you're looking for if you go CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown off the bat, right? So we're going to go Mixon for the first. Now you have another question at the second, and you're probably on the clock, and you're thinking, do I go third wide receiver? Do I go running back? Personally, I love going 2 wide receiver, 2 running backs in drafts. And I think it fell perfectly to you, with Andrews going where he did, with Keenan Allen going where he did, 4 quarterbacks going early. I don't love Joe Mixon and Travis Etienne as running back ones, but if you're telling me those guys can both be on the same team, fringe RB1s, RB2s, when your wide receivers are CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown, I mean, you don't really need them to do much. You just need them to do what Joe Mixon did last year, getting starter minutes for you. And that's what they do. So although I'm not as high on Etienne as some other people, I think it's the best time to take a running back, make sure you have a little bit of everything. So we're going to pick Etienne, and we're going to see how the next 2 rounds pop out. And through 4 rounds, for those of you listening to the audio podcast, we went CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown back to back. Then we went Joe Mixon and Travis Etienne. Pretty solid base there, if you ask me. Not a lot outside the injury bug obviously goes wrong. You know what you have in players as our 5th round pick comes around. And we have some options here. We have Kyle Pitts and Dallas Goedert. If you know me, you know I'm not a huge tight end guy. Chris Godwin, DeAndre Swift. We have them in there. Not a whole lot of great options. Alvin Kamara, Brandon Ayuk, James Conner. So obviously we have 2 picks back to back. Again, this is a 3rd wide receiver spot. That flex spot, this wide receiver tight end, we're going to count as a tight end. And we'll have one of the flexes on the bench. My bad about that. But looking at this, Kyle Pitts, how many times do we have to learn? This guy, you can't trust him. He's a great player. I'm not saying he's not. But you can't trust him. Dallas Goedert, if you've heard Zach talk, me talk, Luke talk, he's about as solid of a tight end as you can get. And in the 5th, 6th round, he's a steal. He just is. However, I think there's a little better value here if you ask me. I think there's some really good tight ends that you can wait on. Meanwhile, I think there are some position players that you can't. And one of those position players, for me, is Chris Godwin. Obviously, he'd be your wide receiver 3. On most teams, he's probably going to be a dang good wide receiver 2. So getting him as a wide receiver 3 is just a really good thing to have. He's as consistent as he comes. I know Baker and Kyle Trask are fighting for that quarterback spot, but it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Chris Godwin is a safety valve there. He's been fantastic for the last how many years, with Brady, without Brady. It doesn't matter. He just produces. So I'm really big on getting wide receiver here. Hey, you're done with starting wide receivers. So we're going to take him here. Now the question becomes, what do you do? Obviously, we have 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs. And this is where, again, if you've been watching our streams, you know how we feel about this guy. He would be going in the flex in this team. And he's a guy that won't last the whole season. Let's be real honest with each other. He's not going to last the whole season. But when he is on the field, he's going to be fantastic. And as we've said, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, they count the exact same as week 10, week 11, week 12. Getting wins early is pretty big too. And he's going to be on the field and he's going to be getting a big workload. That is James Conner. He's fantastic. He's going to be the workhorse for the Cardinals. So, I mean, you look at this team right now, a heck of a start. You got Joe Mixon, Travis Etienne, and James Conner at your running backs and flex. You got CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, and Chris Godwin as your 3 wide receivers. And I know some people would say, why not tight end? Why not wide receiver? Why not quarterback? But the way the board fell, I feel like you got to go there. So suddenly we find ourselves in the 7th round. And interesting run here. Obviously, Deshaun Watson got taken just before us. Prescott was taken that round. If you know me, you know my boy Javonte Williams is gone. James Cook is gone. Mike Evans is gone. So we come to a little lull in the draft. But I think this works out perfectly. I think this works out perfectly for what we got. Because what we don't have, quarterback, tight end, defense, kickers, obviously we're not drafting here. You know us. Just pick them up right before the season starts. One of the biggest positions in there is tight end. And it's so tough to predict. We've seen it year after year after year. Calvin Ridley might be back this year for Jacksonville, but Evan Ingram is still going to be a problem. Trevor Lawrence obviously trusts him. He's come back. People have already forgotten before last year how good he was with the Giants when his hands were working. And he drops perfectly to you in the 7th round. So we're going to take Evan Ingram in the 7th. Now you're sitting at the 8th round thinking, what do you do? Again, running backs, starting running backs, we're good. Starting wide receivers, we're good. Tight end, we're good. It's really a great place to be because now you're in round 8. You know, all those rounds left, you can just get backups and you can just get depth. Obviously, you still need a quarterback, but depth is the name of the game, and being in that position already is really good because some people are going to be outside of maybe a 3rd running back for the flex, 3rd wide receiver. Maybe they don't even have a tight end. So you're going to be in a really good position if you find yourself in round 8 and you only need a quarterback. So the question is, do you take quarterback here? Obviously, best quarterback available, Tua, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Anthony Richardson. Here's where it gets a little dicey. Because obviously, Anthony Richardson is a fantastic player. And you'd love to have him. Is he going to get back to you? He probably should. Do you take the risk? For me, I say you do. I'm not going quarterback here. Tua, you can't rely on him to stay on the field. Aaron Rodgers with that defense and that running attack. Obviously, we know he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the game. Fantasy-wise, though, is he going to get that to you? Probably not. We also have Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith that we can wait on as a safety valve. So for me, I'm strictly going best available here. And not a lot of best available, if I'm being honest with you. Jackson Smith and Jigba, we know the problems with Seattle with all the mouths to feed. Andy's a little hurt. We'll see if he plays week 1. Pat Freiermuth, don't need a tight end. Jordan Addison, tight ends, defense, Jahan Dotson, A.J. Dillon. So it's tough. Who do you want to go with? Wide receiver, running back, wide receiver, running back. For me, I look at it and I say, Joe Mixon, Travis Etienne are fine running backs. Do we really trust James Conner? I just told you, how long do we expect him to stay healthy? What do you get from him? So it's a big question mark there. So for me, I'm looking at it, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers. I'm taking another running back. And although I don't love him a whole lot as a player, I think he's one of the best handcuffs in the league, and that's A.J. Dillon. Obviously, we know he has a week-to-week role. If Aaron Jones goes down, we know it opens up the floodgates to him. He probably won't be getting 30 touches a game, but he's going to be getting that goal line work. He's going to be getting the runs in between the red zones. And so for me, I go A.J. Dillon. It's a safety valve. He's a sure player. Will he ever start for you? Probably not. But that's not what we're really caring too much right here as a guy starting for you week to week. So we're going to take A.J. Dillon. So we're through 8 rounds again, We got Joe Mixon, Travis Etienne, and James Conner at the running backs and flexes. CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Godwin at the wide receivers, Ingram at the tight end, A.J. Dillon on the bench. So now it's come back to us, 9th round. And, look who's there. We got our pick of quarterbacks. It's time to take a quarterback. Obviously, we have more than enough depth, more than enough strength, more than enough starters. So the question becomes Kirk Cousins or Anthony Richardson. And this is really tough. I'm not going to lie. If this were to come up to me in my draft, I would give it some pause, even though I've thought about it a lot. Kirk Cousins, we know who he is. He's about as consistent as it comes for fantasy quarterbacks. He's never going to probably get you 30 points a game, but they just signed Hawkinson to a nice deal. We know he has Justin Jefferson. We know they have Jordan Addison. KJ Osborne is very underrated as well. Madison, those running backs, we know they can play pass-catching roles. So they're good there. On the other side, Anthony Richardson gives you the points with the legs, and he might not be the most consistent arm. He does have a cannon, we know that, but accuracy, we don't know. Wide receivers, obviously, they only have 3 on the roster, I believe, still. Downs, Pittman, and Alec Pierce. I'm high on Richardson, but I think you got to look to hit the ground running if you want to win a championship. Maybe go for that first-round bye. Anthony Richardson, maybe you get him on waivers. Maybe not. Probably not in this scenario. But for me, I'm taking what I know I have. Take what you know you have. Go for the stars later. So I'm going Kirk Cousins here. I think he's as good as it comes. And there is a conversation to be had about possibly taking 2 quarterbacks. That's not really my style. I think, you can trust Kirk Cousins if you take Richardson. What's the point of taking a Kirk Cousins as a backup when you have good players on the board? So right here, as we come around in the 10th round here, there are options. Obviously, the top names on the board, Traylon Burks, Khalil Herbert, Odell, Charbonnet, Sutton, Kmet, Elijah Moore, Kincaid, among others. And really, you can go with whatever you want here. Obviously, we have 4 running backs, 3 wide receivers. So, maybe you look wide receiver depth. You go, who do you go for? For me, it's tough because I'm not a Cortland Sutton fan in terms of I think he's a good player, but I don't see him staying on the field. He never does. I'm not a really Odell Beckham fan. I'm not really a Traylon Burks fan. But with that being said, the biggest role here among those 3 guys is Cortland Sutton. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy is down. When he comes back is up in the air. He won't be back out for the whole season, but he's out. Tim Patrick is out. We know that. So the receiving weapons are a little low for Denver. We know Sean Payton. We know he's going to sling the rock. So I look at those guys. Do I trust Tennessee's quarterback situation? No. Do I trust Baltimore to throw the ball enough? No. So although he's not at the top of the ADP, I think he's the best available. Wide receiver is the way to go. I'm taking Cortland Sutton in the 10th round. And I'm feeling pretty good about it. So we got a couple rounds left. Again, for those of you on audio, we got Kirk Cousins at quarterback. We got Mixon, Etienne, and Connor at the running backs and flex. We got Lamb, A.J. Brown, and Godwin at the wide receiver. Ingram at the tight end. Dillon and Sutton on the bench. And now it is time for us up again in the 11th round. Only a few rounds left, and there's not a lot of players left. But there are 2 right here that absolutely scream my name right now. And they're both different positions. So that's a great little help there. And those guys, I'm sure you already know it if you've watched Tank Bigsby, Rashad Bateman. Sky Moore, Kansas City, they got a lot of mouths to feed. Tyler Boyd, at the end of the year, he's always going to be like wide receiver 30. But with that being said, week to week, you're never starting him. You never really even starting him in flex, even in bye weeks. Probably not feeling confident with it. Whereas Rashad Bateman, we've seen who he is. We've seen he's extremely talented. He's still young. I know I did just talk about Baltimore not having a consistent pass game, but if we do know one thing, we know injuries plague Baltimore. Odell's coming back from big injury. He's new to the fold. Baltimore wants to throw the ball. And we're in the 11th round. We're starting to take lottery tickets here. So I think it's time to take a Baltimore wide receiver. I think it's okay. Rashad Bateman. And like I mentioned him earlier, the next pick, we're going to be taking Tank Bigsby. We already have Travis Etienne. Tank Bigsby gives us a great safety valve here. And on top of that, he has a week-to-week role. I know it sounds crazy to take two running backs from the same team, but again, we're talking about safety valves here. This is about as safe as it gets. And I know you don't want to, go all safe on your fantasy team. That's no fun. That's no fun at all. But Tank Bigsby could actually have a week-to-week role, and he helps you a little bit. And he could go off some weeks too. He has that explosive potential. Jacksonville's in a very soft division, a very soft run defense division. So there will be some weeks where he gets his too. Don't get it twisted. So we're going to take Tank Bigsby. We're coming along near the end of this draft here. And I got to be feeling pretty good about this. Kirk Cousins at quarterback. We have our running backs, have our wide receivers. And we have the safety valves. We have some lottery tickets and Sutton and Bateman. We have guys that can vulture up in usage like A.J. Dillon and Tank Bigsby. Sitting in good position here. And as we've said, could you take a kicker and defense here? Yeah, but, that's not the name of the game. Why would you want to take the last defense or be last on the runs of defense or be last on the runs of kickers when you go for a lottery ticket? Maybe they pan out. Maybe they don't. Hey, maybe you have to cut them right before the season. But guess what? It's better than leaving them and saying, dang, what could have been? One of lottery tickets, if you listen to us, our show on Wednesday, Lombardi Sweep, a Packer podcast, go check it out. But if you listen to us at all, you know that we truly do believe and we truly think that the best wide receiver on this Packer team is Romeo Doubs. Not just fantasy, well, not in fantasy, but talent-wise, he's the best receiver on this team. We said it when he was drafted that he was a little raw, as Watson was as well, but with work, he would be the best. And he is the best. And you look at him here, again, our wide receivers are set. He's a heck of a lottery ticket. We've seen Christian Watson, can't trust him to stay healthy. We saw him last year barely staying healthy. And Love loves Romeo Doubs. So if you're looking lottery tickets, he's about as good as it gets, especially when the others are Darnell Mooney in a run-heavy Chicago offense, Jalen Hyatt in New York when they have a ton of options and a very deep receiving core in terms of everybody being around the same threshold. You got some tight ends there. So we're going to go Romeo Doubs, and we get a turn back. And we can just pick here. And really, we're free to do pretty much whatever you want. Wide receiver, running back, obviously not going to be taking a second tight end, but this is where it's nice. And this is where, you go back to the first 4 rounds when I went 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs. This is where it's nice. We're not reaching for anything late. We can just go with the flow, best available. And best available here is a little down the map. I already talked about Mooney, Vaughn, Dallas. I know people are high on him. We talked about Hyatt, the tight ends there, Zay Jones. They're great, but they're not Devin Singletary. I think Devin Singletary has a week-to-week role. On top of that, you look at their top runners and their physical runners, especially Dameon Pierce. Physical runners are going to get the crap beat out of them this year. Does Dameon Pierce have enough to be a workhorse? That probably won't be his role, but if there is a game where they give him a lot of carries, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets banged up middle of the season. Who steps in? Devin Singletary. People forget he's a solid running back. The Bills kind of ruined him, but he's had some flashes. He's shown flashes. We know Houston likes to run the ball. He's also capable as a pass catcher. Not super, not like a old Matt Forte there, but he can still do the job. And so if you're looking for a running back or a wide receiver. Again, none of these guys really, really give you much to be excited about. Devin Singletary does give you that glimmer of hope, so we're going to take him. And obviously, the roster size at this point is a little smaller than your drafts, so bear with me a little bit. But we're going to call it here. And this is how our draft turns out. We went CeeDee Lamb in the first, and I think it turned out really well. I think it was one of the best drafts. Some of you may not. I know the boom isn't as much there as you would like, but at quarterback, we got Kirk Cousins. Running back, we got Mixon and Etienne. Wide receivers, we have Lamb, Brown, and Godwin. Definitely the best wide receiver group in this class out of these teams. Tight end, we got Evan Ingram. Flex, we got James Conner. And on the bench, we have A.J. Dillon. Again, can vulture up to an RB1 role real quick and as week-to-week value. Cortland Sutton, all the targets are going down. He's left standing. Rashad Bateman, great lottery ticket with Baltimore wanting to throw it more. Tank Bigsby gives you a little safety valve with taking ETN in the third round there. And again, little week-to-week value there and in a soft division. Romeo Doubs, best wide receiver on the Packers. I will say that until I am proven otherwise. Another great lottery ticket. And Devin Singletary, again, another guy that can vulture up to the first round. And if I'm looking at it, again, I like this team. I really do. I know the running backs aren't as explosive. Everybody wants a Josh Jacobs. Everybody wants a Derrick Henry. Everybody wants a Nick Chubb. I'm looking at the receivers. You have the best receiving class. You have a good quarterback. You have a good solid tight end. You have two running backs that are not going to lose you weeks. You look at the bench. You have a lot of height, a lot of guys that can give you, maybe a little more than the average flex player, the average bench player from week to week. I think you're really set up nice if you take a roster like this. And again, I think it all goes back to putting yourself in a position early to take best available. And when you're picking back to back, that's a really, really easy thing to do. And that's why it's so great. So I know it was a short video, but thanks for rocking with us. I brought the energy. I hope you're bringing it too. Remember, like, share, subscribe, rate us 5 stars. Hey, tell us what you want to see. Hey, we're doing these for you. If you wanted a new format to look at, new video streams, new dates, hey, let us know. We'll look at that. Again, join us at Fantasy Football by Committee on Facebook. We're starting a community over there. Be a part of it. It's a good time. Have questions in there right now about trades, dynasty, superflex, you name it. We got it. Check us out on Good Pods, wherever you get your podcasts. Check out Lombardi Sweep on Wednesday nights. Check out all the Flurry Sports podcasts as well. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well. We just passed 10,000. New thing is 25,000. And we said if we got to 25,000 by the end of the football season, hey, guess what? We're going to Chile. It was already decided. So make us go to Chile and, we'll record it and we'll see what happens. So without further ado, shout out to you, Randy. Shout out to you, Tweety. Thanks for rocking with us. You all have a great Friday night. You all have fantastic drafts. I wish you nothing but the best. No snipes at all. Oh, as always, come back, check us out, and we will be rocking with you later. Have a good one.